I remember the morning of my first job interview as if it were yesterday, a mix of excitement and dread swirling inside me like a storm waiting to break. Fresh out of college, I was desperate for my first big break, the kind of opportunity that would finally let me escape the confines of my parents' house, where the walls seemed to echo with expectations and every conversation felt more like an interrogation. I had settled into the interview office, a room perfumed with the faint scent of peppermint and polished wood, the kind of place where dreams were supposed to begin but often fizzled into disappointments. My interviewer, a middle-aged man named Mr. Henley, had a warm smile that immediately put me at ease, or at least as at ease as one could feel when the weight of one's future hung in the balance. As he flipped through my resume, he made small talk, commenting on my university experiences, and I felt a strange sense of connection. We laughed over shared memories of late-night studying and caffeine overloads. Yet, as the questions turned serious, I began to feel the undertow of tension, as if our pleasant exchange was concealing a rapidly rising tide. The questions grew increasingly rigorous, probing into my past experiences, and that's when I noticed it, the subtle red flags that flickered in the depths of his expressions. A tightness around his eyes when I mentioned my volunteer work, a barely noticeable sigh when I talked about my time in group projects. I brushed it off at first, thinking I was simply reading too much into things. After all, this was just an interview, right? But as I articulated my vision for the future and the contributions I believed I could make to his organization, I caught a flicker of disappointment cross his face, as though I had disappointed him before I even began. The day soon morphed into an unexpected display of emotional vulnerability as I detailed my volunteer experiences, explaining how they shaped my views on teamwork and leadership. Mr. Henley nodded along, but there was a waning enthusiasm in his body language, an almost imperceptible retreat that made my heart sink. Somewhere inside, I suddenly felt the urge to justify myself, to explain why my life was a patchwork of different ventures rather than the linear path he seemed to be hoping for. The interview dragged on, each question exposing the gulf between what I thought he wanted to hear and what I needed to say. I could sense the distance growing with each passing moment, and as I exited the office, I wondered if I had left a piece of myself behind, if perhaps I had seemed too disorganized in a world that revered neat, clean lines. Days passed, each waking moment overshadowed by a gnawing doubt about my future, until finally, I received the email I had both dreaded and anticipated. "Thank you for your application," it started, and my heart sank further as words like regret and fit screamed at me from the screen. I spent that evening wallowing in self-pity, questioning my approach and feeling the weight of my perceived failures, replaying the interview in my mind over and over again. But there, amidst the waves of despair, a simple realization began to surface. I had been so preoccupied with their expectations that I had lost sight of my own identity. Slowly, I started crafting my narrative in my head, embracing the idea that my journey didn't have to mirror others' journeys to be valid or worthwhile. It was a winding path, a landscape of lessons learned, which would ultimately prepare me for opportunities that truly resonated with my spirit. I began applying for more positions, shifting my focus onto companies whose values aligned with my own. The healing was gradual but vital. I delved into further volunteering, enhancing my skill set, and forming connections that felt genuine. The process felt less like a chore and more like a journey, with growth nestled in every bump along the road. Finally, after weeks of uncertainty and with a renewed sense of purpose, I received a call from another firm, a startup with a mission that spoke directly to me. I didn't just want to rush into this new opportunity. For the first time, I felt equipped to be myself, to genuinely convey my experiences and beliefs. This time, when I stepped into the interview, the air felt different, and rather than presenting a facade, it was just me and my authentic journey. The room radiated warmth, and while the questions were still probing, I was met with shared smiles and nods of understanding. As I walked out, I felt a calm triumph wash over me, knowing that I had given my story wings. It was about much more than the job, it was a sincere expression of who I was, and I realized that discovering the right fit was about more than avoiding red flags. It was about embracing the search for places where my passions could thrive. Update: it's been a couple of months since I started my new job, and I can't express how right it feels. I've learned that the most significant red flags aren't just in the interviewers but often lie in the disconnect between who we think we should be and who we truly are. I've also developed a friendship with Mr. Henley, who reached out to offer me an unexpected opportunity to collaborate on a community project. Sometimes, paths cross in unexpected ways, and I've come to appreciate the beauty of my winding journey, ready for whatever lies ahead. As I sat in my cozy living room, the soft light of the setting sun casting golden hues across the walls, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come since that pivotal day. The little project Mr. Henley proposed had started as a simple idea, a community mural to bring the neighborhood together, but it blossomed into something far more meaningful. We gathered a lively group of people, each with their unique stories and talents, and before I knew it, the vibrant colors we splashed onto the canvas didn't just represent our individual identities but wove together a tapestry that reflected the spirit of our community. Each stroke of paint was a conversation, a connection, a laugh shared over pizza and cans of soda, with old men telling stories of yesteryear as young children splattered paint with joyful abandon. Those evenings became my sanctuary, a place to recharge away from the stresses of work, and I found myself forming relationships that felt genuine and enduring. As the weeks passed, I noticed Mr. Henley becoming a great friend, offering support and guidance, but also a touch of mystery. He had an ease about him and an otherworldly way of navigating challenges that left me in awe, yet sometimes I caught glimpses of a deeper layer within him, like shadows lingering just beneath a bright surface. One Friday evening, as we took a break to admire the burgeoning mural, I mustered the courage to ask him about himself. The way he paused, looking off into the distance as if weighing his words, left me both intrigued and anxious. Eventually, he shared snippets of his life, starting with his earlier days as a graphic designer to his decision to forsake the corporate grind for passion projects. In the midst of his tale, there was a mention of overcoming personal demons, a fleeting reference that seemed to deepen the shadows in his eyes. Over time, an unspoken bond formed between us, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't revealing everything. Perhaps it was my experience from the past, where I'd seen the divide between what people presented and the truths they often hid, but the subtle red flags flickered like weak lights in the back of my mind. There was a day, certain in my conviction, when I stitched together my courage and invited him to share more. He regarded me with a smirk, the kind that held 1,000 secrets, and eventually began to talk about the time he spent in a creative retreat that pieced his life together after an emotional collapse. Part of him had always felt out of place, a wanderer searching for a purpose, yearning for acceptance. But as he allowed me a glimpse into his past, I began to sense weight behind those words, a history not just of passion but of scars that still would flare up uninvited. That night, under a velvety sky spattered with stars, I felt a strange sense of kinship with Mr. Henley. We were both navigating these paths toward healing and authenticity, albeit in different ways. Yet, I couldn't ignore my instincts forever, and the next week I overheard snippets of conversation during our group sessions, words that seemed at odds with the harmonious creation we were cultivating. Some participants whispered about how Mr. Henley had a reputation for getting close to those he saw talent in, only to shift their focus elsewhere, leaving them feeling abandoned. It nagged at me, the thought that everything I cherished about the project was somehow entangled in an imbalance I couldn't yet comprehend. Feeling the pressure bubble inside me, I sought solace in my journal, pouring my thoughts onto the pages as if to unravel the knotted threads of confusion. Were these cautionary tales true? Did my intuition speak of parallel realities, one where we completed this mural together in camaraderie and another where I would find myself tangled in the remnants of trust misplaced? The emotional roller coaster of creating art intertwined with the intrigue surrounding Mr. Henley served as both my safe haven and a source of restlessness. I was in love with this newfound freedom, the ability to express who I truly was, but how could I reconcile that love with the gnawing uncertainty that lingered when I interacted with him? Then came the turning point. During one of our collaborative afternoons, as we painted amidst laughter and music, I noticed Mr. Henley hovering a little too close to one young artist, a girl bursting with potential and eager to impress. The way he offered suggestions, his gaze lingering longer than it should have, stirred something primal within me. I pushed down the tightness in my chest and concentrated on my work, focusing on the colors I was mixing, but it was hard to ignore the growing rumbles of jealousy that pulsed through me. Later that week, I decided it was time to have a straightforward conversation. I invited Mr. Henley to grab coffee after our mural session. My heart pounded as the words piled up in my throat. Sitting across from him in the cafe, the aroma of brewed coffee enveloping us, I looked down into my cup, the steam swirling and curling into the air. Mr. Henley, I began, fighting the tremor in my voice, I want to talk about the project and how we navigate friendships within it. I saw curiosity spark in his eyes, and as I poured out my concerns, I expected some form of acknowledgement, but instead, he leaned back, arms crossed, with that infuriating smirk gracing his lips. You know, he said, sometimes it's easy to form connections when we believe the narrative we tell ourselves. But how often do we step back and realize it's just a story we create? Maybe your fears are just remnants of your old job. Let go of those preconceptions and enjoy the ride. His words sliced deeper than I anticipated. As I wrestled with the truth of it, I recognized that he had a point. I was holding tightly to insecurities, a product of a fear-laden past, while he seemed to tread with intention. Yet the shadows returned, turning the warmth of camaraderie into a cold unease. The conversation hung like stale air around us until he reached across the table, his hand atop mine, grounding me. In that moment, I chose to trust my instincts and release the tension gnawing at my gut. "Let's realign our focus," I finally suggested, my pulse racing. "From now on, let's engage everyone equally. Nobody's story should be sidelined." A flicker of something danced across his eyes, perhaps surprise or contemplation, and he finally smiled, though I sensed the undercurrent of a challenge. "All right," he acquiesced, "but we'll need to be mindful not to lose the spark." And with that agreement, I felt a renewed sense of hope settle within me, the decision to clear the ambiguous shadows, forging ahead with both clarity and purpose. As the mural neared completion in the weeks that followed, I found a rhythm of joy reverberating through the community, fueled in part by the newfound understanding among us. Mr. Henley and I became partners not just in the art but also in fostering honest conversations, cultivating an environment of trust, and drawing out the best in those around us. There was magic in the unexpected twists of our journey, a reminder that while red flags can signal caution, they can also unlock profound lessons about ourselves and others. As I looked around at the vibrant mural, realizing it represented not only our individual contributions but also the resilience of teamwork and understanding, I understood fully that my path was no longer obscured by shadows. Every winding road had led me here, ready to embrace whatever came next, eager as always to evolve alongside those whom I once perceived as mere acquaintances and who had, through the power of vulnerability and connection, transformed into lifelong friends. As I stood there, taking in the vibrant hues of the mural, the laughter and chatter of my colleagues floated through the air like a gentle breeze, warm and inviting. The colors seemed to dance in harmony with the embodiment of what we'd created together, a testament to our shared struggles and triumphs, each stroke representing a story, a lesson we all carried with us. Not long ago, I had felt adrift, questioning everything about my career and the person I was becoming, and now I found solace in the knowledge that I had surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared. Mr. Henley, with his chronically optimistic disposition and a knack for bringing out the best in everyone, had become a source of inspiration for me. His dedication to the project had opened a window into my own capabilities, encouraging me to explore not just my creative side, but my leadership potential as well. Together we had coordinated workshops that brought the community in to participate, allowing families to paint alongside us, sharing their hopes and dreams in splashes of color. With every paintbrush stroke, I witnessed strangers transform into friends, forging connections that would bridge gaps created by years of indifference. I remember one particular day when a young girl, no older than 8, approached me with wide eyes filled with wonder. "Can I help with your mural?" she asked, her fingers stained with shades of green and blue. I knelt down to meet her gaze, feeling a warmth swell in my chest, and said, "Of course. What do you want to paint?" She thought for a moment and declared, "A huge butterfly. One that can carry all our dreams." I glanced over at Mr. Henley, who was intently focused on the section of the wall behind me, his kind smile betraying the pure joy he felt at witnessing this exchange. That day was a reminder of the unanticipated revelations life can bring, what it means to hope and dream, and I made a point to ensure that the little girl's butterfly was as bold and colorful as her spirit, a new red flag of promise fluttering high amid life's uncertainties. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself not just growing in my new role, but stepping into a version of myself I never thought possible. I shared dinner with colleagues after long days at work, engaging in conversations that stretched far beyond mere small talk. We debated the best pizza toppings, laughed at our rookie mistakes in the early weeks of the project, and even shared our fears about the future. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an ethereal glow over the city, I found myself at a small rooftop gathering. With laughter punctuating the crisp air, I felt a growing connection, and somehow, everyone there felt like family. It struck me then, the red flags of my past had been an invitation to reevaluate, and here, I was surrounded by love and support, reaffirming that each twist and turn had sculpted a life that felt richer, more meaningful. But it wasn't just the mural or the friendships that grounded me, it was the conversations I would have with Mr. Henley about vulnerability and authenticity. He would often sit across from me, coffee mug in hand, creating space for deep discussions about our journeys. "You know," he'd say, his eyes twinkling with insights, "it's easy to focus on the flaws of others during interviews, but sometimes we forget to reflect on our own fears and insecurities that block us from seeing their true potential. I found comfort in his words, realizing that while job interviews aim to decipher a person's capabilities, they were equally a challenge for the candidate to embrace their own truth. Those reflections continued to shape my personal narrative, leading me toward resilience and understanding. I was often reminded of a quote I had once dismissed as cliché: "The only way to do great work is to love what you do." Only now did it resonate with wisdom, vibrating with the essence of community, connection, and finding joy amidst uncertainty. The mural, now a collaborative masterpiece, stood proudly as a symbol of that journey, telling of creativity birthed in friendship and the magic that emerges when we choose to let down our walls. As I indulged in that realization, I knew that the next chapter of my life was open for exploration. My mind wandered to the next community project Mr. Henley and I had been brainstorming, an arts festival that would showcase not only shared artistic expressions but also foster mentorship in the local youth. I could hardly wait. The thrill of possibility rushed through me, invigorating my spirit with hope and excitement for what lay ahead. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly aligned with my purpose, fully aware that every winding road had led me here, to this moment of connection, creativity, and clarity. Looking toward the future, I welcomed the unexpected, accepting that sometimes the most beautiful journeys unravel from the red flags we choose to face with courage and grace. I never thought I would find myself in a situation that led me to question my own morals over something as simple as a dog and a few disgruntled neighbors, but life has a curious way of throwing challenges our way when we least expect them. My name is Sam, and I've lived in the same cozy house at the end of Maplewood Street for just over 5 years. It had always been a peaceful neighborhood, one where the biggest concern was whether Miss Thompson's hydrangeas would bloom in time for her garden party, rather than petty squabbles or disputes. My trusty companion, Bella, a golden retriever with an insatiable curiosity, quickly became a favorite amongst the neighbors. She possessed an innate ability to brighten the bleakest of days, her joy was infectious, and her gentle nature made her an ideal friend not just to me but to everyone around. However, a recent encounter had left me wrestling with doubt. Had I crossed a line by allowing Bella to handle things her way? One evening, after a long day at work where the creaking of office chairs and flickering fluorescent lights had drained my energy, I decided to take Bella out for her usual evening run in the backyard. The sky had started to shift into softer shades of pink and orange, and the chirping of crickets began to fill the air, creating the perfect setting for a little relaxation. As I sat on the porch, watching Bella chase her tennis ball, I noticed our neighbors, the Johnsons, arguing animatedly across the street. They had been embroiled in a feud over their new fence, which was apparently too close to the property line. I had overheard snippets of it during my outdoor mornings but chose to remain uninvolved. Those moments of rivalry never seemed to disrupt the usual tranquility of our community, until this particular night. Suddenly, Bella, intrigued by the commotion, stopped mid-chase, her ears perked up, and in a heartbeat, she dashed towards the Johnsons, barking excitedly as she approached. I could see that her spirited barks caught the attention of both the Johnsons and the other family involved in the argument. For a moment, I thought of calling her back. She could either brighten the situation or distract them further. But then another bark escaped her lips, one that projected confidence, asserting her presence as if she held the authority of a canine peacekeeper. Instead of instinctively recalling Bella, I hesitated, watching the scene unfold from the safety of my porch, wondering if she's playfully trying to referee the situation. And just like that, things took an unexpected turn. The Johnsons turned their frustrated expressions into amused ones, laughter emerging between their vehemence as they observed my dog prancing confidently around them, seemingly oblivious to their spats. They began to lower their voices, almost whispering as Bella circled them, trying to engage with each person. For a fleeting moment, it felt like an amusing break, a moment of levity that cut through the tension. However, the spell was short-lived. Bella, with a boundless enthusiasm, ran back towards me, leaping like an eager puppy, proud of her tiny intervention. I felt a rush of warmth and pride swell in my chest, perhaps she had achieved something with her playful antics. But as I turned my gaze back to the Johnsons, I noticed their expressions had mutated, now they glared at me. "Nice dog you got there," one of them shouted, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Maybe next time, you should control her better." I could feel my heart sink, the weight of their disappointment echoing in the air. Suddenly, I felt the eyes of everyone in the neighborhood upon me, a million unspoken questions lingering in the cool evening breeze. Had I really done something worth faulting? Should I have acted differently? Inside, I started an internal debate, wondering if perhaps I was indeed the instigator of my neighborly woes. That evening, while Bella rested by my feet, I found myself scrolling through community chat groups, curiosity tugging at my conscience. Other residents had chimed in, seemingly discussing the need to reprimand Bella, a dog not only meant to protect but also to be a disruptor of harmony. I felt trapped in a moral maze, conflicting thoughts swirling in my mind. Days passed with a heavy silence between me and the Johnsons. I apologized in hushed tones whenever I encountered them, but their retorts were chilly and distant. I can't describe the unease I felt each time Bella barked, looking up at me with her bright eyes, as if asking me to send her after the neighbors once more. Eventually, my anxiety morphed into anger, not towards the Johnsons but at myself. I had wanted to keep the peace, yet now I was left feeling like a villain in my own home, culled by a series of decisions made out of impulse rather than malice. I couldn't shake off the question that lingered inside my mind: am I the asshole for not recalling my dog when she chased my neighbors off my property? In the days that followed, I grew more reflective. I realized how easy it was to get caught up in the perceptions of others, leading me to slowly let go of my guilt. Bella was innocent in all this, an unwitting participant in a human conflict that had spiraled beyond playful barks. It dawned on me that I wasn't just protecting her by allowing her to chase off the Johnsons, I was allowing her to be herself, vibrant and carefree. As the summer skies grew darker, I made a decision: I would invite the Johnsons over for a barbecue, an opportunity to mend the rift that had caused an unwelcoming chill in our neighborhood. Stepping outside, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me, but I steadied my breath and carried on. The smell of grilled burgers began to fill the air, and as the Johnsons tentatively approached our doorstep with initial reservations, all that slowly began to shift. The encounter ended with laughter, Bella stealing the spotlight as she playfully wooed every guest for scraps. Finally, as the sun set, painting the sky with hues of lavender and indigo, we gathered around the fire pit, quietly acknowledging that conflict is part of living in close proximity. Reflecting on that night under the stars, I found a sense of peace, an understanding that while we may err in our judgment, it's how we come together afterward that truly matters. My heart swelled with relief as I realized that I hadn't harmed my neighbors. Instead, I had enabled a chance for connections to deepen. And as for Bella? She's still a free spirit, and I wouldn't want her any other way. Update: a week after the barbecue, I received a message from the Johnsons over the neighborhood chat group, thanking me for an enjoyable evening. They recognized their own part in the initial escalation and shared stories of their own pets that offered a glimpse into their world. It turns out, all it took was a little ceremony of shared laughter and the promise of goodwill to wipe the slate clean and embark on a more harmonious chapter for Maplewood Street. My heart swells with hope and understanding that sometimes, all it takes is a playful dog to remind us of the bonds that can uplift our community. As I sat on my porch that evening, the sun dipping low beyond the horizon and casting golden hues over Maplewood Street, I reflected on how transformative the past few days had been. Bella, my spirited golden retriever, lay by my feet, her gentle breathing a soothing rhythm against the chirping of crickets that began to fill the air. Each time I glanced down at her soft, golden fur, I felt a swell of gratitude, not just for her loyal companionship, but for the unexpected bridge she had built between my neighbors and me. The Johnsons, with their youthful laughter and easygoing nature, had become a source of warmth in my life that I hadn't anticipated. When I first moved to this suburb, I was hopeful yet slightly reticent about engaging with my neighbors. After living in a busy city for years, where the sounds of traffic drowned out the feeble attempts at community greetings, I was unaccustomed to the warmth that now blossomed around me. Having lived the last few years in solitude, the hum of community life felt both refreshing and intimidating. At the beginning of my stay in Maplewood, I remained an observer, smiling at neighbors from a distance, offering polite waves but never venturing further. But Bella's exuberance had a knack for cutting through my apprehension. She would trot up to anyone with uncontainable excitement, her tail wagging furiously, urging me to engage. It was through her antics that I began to learn the names of the folks who lived nearby and shared snippets of their lives. That fateful day when Bella decided to chase off those obnoxious trespassers had initially left me feeling anxious, fearing the potential backlash and the strain on our freshly budding relationships. Yet, the message from the Johnsons had shifted everything. The evening had unfolded so beautifully, a mosaic of laughter and stories unveiling our shared experiences. The gentle banter about our pets broke down walls that I had previously thought were impenetrable. It marked the day my neighbors invited me into their circle, emphasizing that we were all human, susceptible to misunderstandings and hesitant connections. As twilight settled in, I thought about how far I had come, and in a subtle way, it dawned on me that life in Maplewood had started to feel like home. With each shared moment over the preceding weekend, the lines between neighbors faded, replaced by the understanding that we were all just trying to navigate this chaotic, beautiful tapestry called life. I smiled to myself, recalling how Bella had innocently prompted our little gathering, a series of unforeseen events all triggered by her instinct to protect, a fierce loyalty accompanied by boundless joy, the very essence of what made dogs so remarkable. Curiously, as the last light of day melted away, I found myself drafting a message in my mind to post later in the neighborhood chat. Something simple yet heartfelt. Perhaps I would propose a summer barbecue, nothing fancy, just some burgers and laughter, a casual gathering where we could continue to weave our lives together. My fingers itched to get the words down, eager to strike while the iron was hot and maintain the warmth that had ignited between us. Yes, I thought, this includes all of the neighbors, everyone from the retirees down the street to the young families who had recently moved in. They all deserved a chance to feel that sense of camaraderie that had begun to envelop Maplewood Street, all sparked by a dog's undeniable spirit. As I rose to prepare a late dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that a new chapter was unfolding for our little corner of the world. The lesson I had gleaned over the last few days was profound. It's extraordinary how a bit of laughter, understanding, and goodwill could shape lives and communities peacefully. I knew within me that this was only the beginning, a gentle nudge towards deeper connections and lasting friendships, all thanks to the loud bark of my beloved dog who believed that every heart could be won over with a wagging tail and a little unfiltered enthusiasm. And as I stepped inside, Bella stood up in a stretch, nuzzling against my leg as if to say, "Let's get to work on building that community, Mom." The ceaseless love we give and receive simply overlaps so effortlessly. In that moment, I felt ready for whatever adventures lay ahead, knowing Bella and I would tackle them together. With Bella's warm presence grounding me, I felt an undeniable shift in the air, one that flowed through the walls of our home and into the very fabric of Maplewood Street. It was invigorating to think that we could play a role in transforming our neighborhood, where once there was tension, there could now be laughter, forgiveness, and camaraderie. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. I pondered how to harness this newfound energy. With the holiday season approaching, a neighborhood block party began to form in my mind, a chance to weave everyone together, even more so than that initial gathering at my house. I quickly created a shared document and dropped it into the neighborhood chat. To my delight, responses flooded in with ideas for food, games, and festive decorations. The more the Johnsons and their 2 kids offered up their favorite recipes, the more others contributed their own delicious dishes. It felt like we were collectively crafting a feast that would tell the story of Maplewood Street, encompassing all of our backgrounds and cultures, with Bella's joyful spirit leading the way. As preparations progressed, Bella became my little assistant. She accompanied me on trips to the local farmers market, where we picked up fresh fruits and vegetables, sniffing around stalls and earning a few head pats from smiling vendors. Each delivery and every shopping trip felt like a micro-venture, her excitement infectious as onlookers marveled at the boundless energy radiating from my ever-enthusiastic companion. Our conversations at home shifted too. No longer were the evenings filled with dull chatter about mundane tasks. Instead, we reveled in brainstorming creative ideas for the party decorations, mixing ideas of string lights with a DIY photo booth featuring props inspired by the quirky personalities of our neighbors. It was a charming banter with Bella by my side, her tail thumping against the floor as if she were adding her own approval to each suggestion. Then came the big day of the block party. Warm sunlight spilled across the street as laughter and hustle filled the once empty spaces. Everyone had pitched in, and our front yard stood transformed into a gathering place adorned with twinkling lights and vibrant banners. Bella darted through the clusters of people, eager to greet everyone, her playful spirit breaking the ice as children giggled and adults shared stories over plates filled with food. It felt as if we had unearthed hidden gems in our neighbors. The taciturn Mr. Harris revealed himself to be a fantastic storyteller, regaling us with tales of his youth, while Mrs. Jenkins brought out an incredible chocolate cake that seemed to disappear within minutes. Throughout that magical afternoon, I found myself reflecting on how just a month ago, stress and uncertainty hung over our neighborhood like a dark cloud, and now, the air was thick with camaraderie and connection. Bella would chase after the kids, barking delightedly as they tossed a frisbee, her playful barks mixing harmoniously with their laughter. Occasionally, one of the little ones would tumble into one of the neighboring groups, and the adults would rush to comfort them, smiles on their faces still. I realized Bella was weaving her charm, encouraging openness, kindness, and unguarded laughter among us all. As dusk approached, an impromptu circle formed around a fire pit, illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns hanging from above. The warmth of the flames complemented the connectedness that blossomed around me, forging bonds between families and thoughts of future gatherings already swirling in the air. By the time the last glow of the sun dipped behind the horizon, I caught sight of Bella nestled comfortably in my lap as we wrapped up the evening, her breath deep in content. A gentle peace enveloped me. It dawned on me that community is born from simple gestures. It is about being present for each other and willingly sharing our lives. Who would have thought that one chaotic chase, followed by a knock on all our hearts, would lead us here? With every heartfelt joke exchanged and every food sample shared, I felt the barriers that had once distanced us crumble away to reveal a welcoming embrace of unity. Perhaps Bella was right all along. With a wagging tail and a heart open to connection, even the most fragmented of communities can truly come together. As I tucked Bella in for the night and settled onto the couch, I opened my phone only to find another message from the neighborhood group, this one a suggestion for a weekly potluck. Reading their words made my heart swell again. With the promise of next week already on the horizon, I realized Bella had sparked not just a party, but a movement, a shift in the hearts of those around us. As I drifted off to sleep, wrapped in the warmth of that community spirit, I felt an unwavering optimism for the future take root within me, certain that together with Bella, we would navigate whatever adventures awaited us. It was a rainy Thursday evening when I found myself scrolling through old Reddit threads, nostalgia washing over me like the soothing sound of raindrops tapping against my window. The question that caught my attention was one that stirred up a melange of memories. What cheat code for a game is burned into your brain? As I paused to reconsider my response, I felt my heart quicken, not because I had a flashy code to share, but because I was reminded of a time when something as simple as a cheat code connected me to my late father in a way nothing else could. Growing up, my dad was a typical weekend warrior, always setting up the console for wrestling games or the latest action-packed adventure. He had no shortage of enthusiasm for gaming or for teaching me all the secrets that came with it. The thrill of winding my way through levels, taking down foes, and uncovering secrets was nothing compared to the laughter we shared over every successful cheat code. Like a rite of passage, he taught me the Konami code one weekend after we had spent the entire day glued to the screen, battling pixelated foes.
Up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start, he said with a smile, and I've never forgotten it.
Years passed, my father aging like a character who was gradually losing all of his lives, and I found myself buried in high school work and the whirlwind of teenage life, forgetting about those glorious weekends spent in front of the television. It wasn't until senior year that the reality of his terminal illness hit me like a sudden game over screen. Some days were good, others were not, and as his condition worsened, we watched his energy dissipate slowly, like a dying battery. On one particularly grim day, when sadness hung heavy in the air punctuated only by the hum of breathing machines, I knew I needed to touch base with my father, remind him of the lighter times. I sneakily set up an old console by his bedside and, in a moment of courage, I turned on the game we used to play together. The familiar theme music trickled into the sterile room, and for a flicker of a moment, I saw a glimmer in his eyes. I sat beside him and recited the Konami code as though it was a prayer. I remembered the joy in his voice when we would conquer a level together, and miraculously, with the nostalgia flooding in, I saw him smile. It was a bittersweet moment, but for a few minutes, he looked like the vibrant father I had known growing up, instead of the frail man his illness had turned him into. As I pressed the buttons on the old controller, we slowly shared stories from our past, reliving glories only we understood through the lens of our shared experiences. But as the weeks stretched on, my father's condition made this game time harder to hold on to. One night, I arrived home from school to find a voicemail from the hospital, and even before the message finished, I knew what it was. The tears fell silently as the void grew within me. In the days that followed, I spent countless nights replaying our old games alone, feeling a storm of emotions that I couldn't articulate. The laugh, the love, the brisk competition, they whirled and hummed within me like a comforting melody. Eventually, the console became too painful to look at, so I packed it away. I focused on life beyond video games, studies, friendships, and dreams, but I found myself returning to that thread. The question lingered in my mind, and I realized that maybe it was less about a cheat code for a game and more about the love that infused our time together. With the much-anticipated college acceptances looming, I finally decided to face my feelings. Heart heavy, I dug out the old console one final time, and although it had gathered dust, it represented a fragment of my past.
Placing it back in the living room, I took a deep breath, and spoke aloud, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start.
That night, I played until the sun began to rise, rediscovering pieces of myself I thought I had lost. I promised myself to cherish not just the game but the lessons surrounding it, the code forever embedding itself in my heart, a reminder of the connection I shared with my dad. Life isn't just about the games we play or the cheats we know, it's about the people who make those experiences meaningful. A few months later, the void still ached but my heart felt oddly light. I found myself on Reddit once again, only now I was more interested in sharing my story rather than simply reminiscing. I hesitated briefly, wondering if my experience was worthy of being shared. Yet, I clicked to start typing, hoping my reflection might resonate with others. After posting, I received a flood of messages, some filled with empathy, others with stories mirroring my own experiences. It was as if a community had wrapped around me, reminding me I was never alone, that the code I recited had a warmth that extended beyond mere pixels on a screen. Sometimes it takes heartache to rediscover joy, even amid the most difficult circumstances, and as those weeks turned into months, I began to heal. The familiarity of the thread would transform into lifelong connections. I realize now that while video games may hold codes, love and memory are the truest cheats, equipping us to rise above and carry on in remembrance of those we cherish. In the gentle embrace of those newfound relationships, I found solace in late-night chats that spilled into dawn, where the shared vulnerabilities of strangers morphed into the pillars of my resilience. Each message came like a cheat code, unlocking pieces of laughter and encouragement just when I thought I'd exhausted my will to get up. When my days felt colorless, I'd delve into the Discord server dedicated to our favorite game, where familiar usernames glowed in the dim light of my screen, like beacon signals in a fog. We spoke of our lives, the burdens we bore beyond the avatar skins and level ups, and I learned that each of us bore scars, those remnants of heartache that reminded us of our humanity. One evening, as I sought refuge in the warm glow of my monitor, a fellow gamer named Jenna shared a card game she'd invented to cope with loss. Its mechanics were simple. Each participant would recite a memory linked to someone they missed, and with each memory shared, they would place down a card, creating a collective tapestry of longing and love. It was a healing exercise wrapped in fun, and I craved to participate, to share my pain and witness theirs. I soon learned that her unexpected vulnerability had a ripple effect. It opened doors to conversations I'd long avoided, opportunities to honor those I'd loved, and yes, even laugh at the quirky antics of my digital counterparts. That weekend, we held our first live game session over a video call, the virtual space overflowing with laughter as nostalgia washed over us like the tide pulling at a shoreline. With every story that was shared, there were gasps and bursts of laughter, the kind that dances at the edge of each syllable, transporting us back to simpler times. I could feel my heart uncoil a little, the heaviness of my grief loosening its grip, if only temporarily. I recalled a game where the protagonist could pause time, a code I'd entered too many times, where in that temporary stillness, I could gather my breath, reflect on the path taken, and, perhaps, reinvent myself anew for the journey ahead. Sharing memories with Jenna and the others felt akin to pressing that button, to freeze a moment while pain and joy collided, reshaping the landscape of my soul. Days turned into weeks, and I grew accustomed to their digital companionship, and though I had initially feared repetition would lead to dullness, I found the opposite to be true. New thoughts would spring forth, each more vivid and surprising, as we built a shared lexicon filled with inside jokes and heartfelt notes. Yet, amidst this warmth, I still felt pangs of the past creeping in uninvited, memories that snaked around my heart and mind, reminding me I would never entirely escape the shadows cast by those I'd lost. One evening, as I sat in my room, I received a direct message from Jenna, one that sent a tremble through me. "Can I call you? I need to share something." My instinct was to say no, to retreat into my well-practiced solitude, but she was my friend, and grief has a way of forcing connections when they feel most fragile. When we were connected by the thin thread of the call, I noticed her voice trembled lightly, unveiling the rawness beneath her steady exterior. "I want to let you know that I'm thinking of doing something for my brother's anniversary in a few months. I want to do a charity walk, and I plan to walk for him." My instincts diverted to protective mode, urging me to reassure her that it was wise to memorialize loved ones, but I held my tongue. "I want to invite you to join me," she continued hesitantly. "I know how much your brother meant to you." The weight of the moment settled into my chest, a bittersweet ache of longing rooted in an understanding that we shared, that what we lost could be the same, yet tasted differently depending on our flavors of love and grief. The thought of stepping into the sunlight, the cool wind against my face, made the walls of my room feel even more constricting. With my brother's absence weighing heavily in my mind, I felt a stirring of doubt. What if I failed? What if remembrance equaled pain? But as I searched for words that could explain the tug of war inside me, I realized I'd be honored. As the days turned to weeks leading up to the walk, I found myself caught in a bittersweet whirlwind, the kind that celebrates life while navigating the ache of loss. Each evening brought moments of introspection and shared laughter with Jenna. We grew closer, entwining our stories as we prepared to honor those we loved. The day of the walk arrived, bright and crisp, casting golden rays upon the gathering crowd. I wore a bracelet Jenna had made, a simple string of beads, colored in hues I knew would resonate with memories of my brother. Surrounded by fellow participants, strangers bonded by shared experiences of loss, I felt the power of collective remembrance, a supporting current that bolstered me through each step. We walked together, side by side, my heart fluttering with every stride taken in their company, infused with purpose, guided by love. As we neared the finish line, exhaustion weighed on my limbs, yet something extraordinary was happening inside me. I could feel laughter bubbling up, mixed with poignant reflection, the dichotomy of grief and joy intertwining as I shared stories of my brother with Jenna. With each story, I began to realize that while we may create cheat codes in games, the true cheat code for living is these connections wrought in love, forged through shared pain and triumph. We crossed the finish line together, breathless under the bright sun, and as I looked into Jenna's eyes, I felt an overwhelming gratitude flood my senses. We had turned heartbreak into a celebration, not forgetting but instead weaving them into the fabric of our lives. Reflections of the past and hopes for the future spun around us, knitting tighter the threads of memory and love. I realized then that life would move forward, like a game with new levels to explore, and I was no longer a player stricken with solo quests, but part of a larger community. Together, we would weave our memories into a legacy that was truly alive, embracing every triumph and trial that lay ahead. Months later, I would often replay those moments in my mind, feeling the warmth of joy spread through me like the golden glow of sunset. And with the echo of each keystroke and every meaningful chat in that online community, I kept the heart of my brother alive, buffering the pain of absence with a new code rooted deep in love and connection that I would carry forth, always. As I advanced through the new levels of life, I found myself eternally grateful for the unexpected friendships forged in that ripple of grief. It had a way of blurring lines between strangers, bringing together gaming enthusiasts from across the globe, each equipped with their own memories and codes burned into their hearts, just like mine. I still remember the first time I logged on after months of silence, heart racing as I entered the virtual realm. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I hesitated, feeling the weight of nostalgia and anxiety press down on me. But then the notifications began to sprinkle in like fairy dust. Friends from the threads had sent me messages, their words wrapping around me like a warm embrace. There was Emma, always cheerful, with a quirky meme tailored just for me, Lucas, dropping in with a resource guide he had compiled on gaming strategies after our countless battles in online lobbies, urging me to rejoin the fight, and Sam, who had shared his own story of loss, letting me know that through our journeys together, we were crafting a safe space where pain could transform into understanding. I found myself drawn back into the world we had collectively built, a server like no other, pulsing with laughter and camaraderie, indefatigable against the melancholy shadows of life. As seasons shifted outside my window, the game morphed too, adding new expansions, characters, and quests that kept us engaged across time zones. It became our ritual, every Friday night transformed into a digital gathering, where we checked in and supported one another through the tangible and intangible hardships life threw our way. We built not just a squad but a family, our mishaps and successes intertwining in a story that felt increasingly layered and profound. I was reminded of the way my brother had embraced every new game with unyielding optimism, and it felt fitting to mirror that spirit through every quest we embarked on, however mundane or extraordinary. I would often take a moment to step back during these sessions, filled with laughter and shared stories, and ponder how far we had come. Through late-night raids and accidental explosions, there was an unspoken promise amongst us, a commitment to carry one another, even when we felt our strongest suit was fraying. Then, one night, as the synthesized glow of our screens illuminated our faces, Lucas broke the stillness with a proposal that made my heart lift. "How about we host an online charity tournament?" he suggested, his voice crackling through the excited chaos of the chat. The idea sparked a flurry of messages, a mixture of enthusiasm and tentative worry. Were we ready for something so public, given our collective wounds? But slowly, the thrill of the thought washed over us. It felt like a power-up we never knew we needed. Our online adventures could help others, we could funnel our shared grief into hope and connection. As I watched the chat explode with chatter and heart emojis, I couldn't help but think it encapsulated everything we had bridged together over those months. We were not simply gamers on a screen, we were bearers of stories, transformed by the codes of resilience instead of defeat. Over the upcoming weeks, we organized the tournament, rallying other gaming communities, reaching out to charities, and brainstorming ways to make the most impact with our efforts. Each member of our group took on roles that suited their strengths, and what should have felt overwhelming transformed into an epic quest, each challenge met with newfound enthusiasm. As the tournament day arrived, I sat at my desk, surrounded by snacks and game controllers, with a sense of urgency tingling in the air. My heart raced not from nerves but from something else entirely. I felt my brother's spirit there with me, every cheer, every laughter echoing within the walls of my home. It was a connection that transcended distance, a network of caring souls gathered beneath the banner of love. When the tournament drew to a close, and winners were celebrated alongside heartfelt stories of those affected by the causes we fought for, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment wash over me. Though the virtual trophies were nice, what resonated deeper was the ripple effect we had created. We had helped others, drawing from our own wounds to craft a legacy filled with hope and healing. As the final moments unfolded with cheers through the voice chat, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, attuned to the hum of laughter, the thrum of shared memories. Maybe it was in these last echoes that I found solace, in the awareness that without my brother's love, I might never have opened my heart wide enough to connect with these resilient souls who had become my lifeline. Amongst us, we shared not just codes, but the vulnerabilities and stories that transformed our gaming into something sacred. The night wound down, but the bonds we formed lingered like the melodic strains of an unforgettable soundtrack. Though the tournament may have ended, the journey continued, a radiant loop that intertwined love and connection, reminding us that in this expansive digital landscape, we could find not only the cheat codes to games but also the healing power hidden within our hearts. In quiet moments, I would recite that same code from my brother, knowing now it unlocked the largest treasure of all, a way to live courageously and effusively in his honor. I remember the night when everything I thought I knew about intimacy was turned on its head, a soft glow of fairy lights softly illuminating the room, casting dancing shadows on the walls as I nervously fiddled with the strap of my top. It was a small apartment, cluttered with the remnants of a busy life, books stacked haphazardly, unwashed coffee mugs dotting the surfaces like uninvited guests, and the faint sound of my partner, Jake, moving around in the kitchen, a few feet away. We've been together for over 2 years, our relationship had blossomed slowly, nurtured by shared interests and a comfortable intimacy that I always thought was just enough. Yet, that night felt different. I had stumbled upon a thread on Ask Reddit earlier in the week titled "What's the best NSFW tip you wish others knew?" And, intrigued by the myriad of bold confessions, I felt a stirring of curiosity. As I read through the comments, I realized there was so much I had yet to explore, both within myself and with Jake. One particularly insightful reply suggested that couples often limit themselves by not communicating their desires, fears, and fantasies openly enough. That thought lingered with me as Jake walked into the living room, a gentle smile on his face, unaware of the internal storm brewing inside me. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his brow furrowed slightly with concern. That question hung between us, heavy with unspoken words. The minutes stretched as we made small talk about our days, but I could feel an invisible barrier between us, a wisp of hesitation that I needed to break through. Seizing the moment, I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I ventured into the conversation I had long avoided. "What do you think about trying something new?" I said, my voice almost a whisper, the words tumbling out before I could take them back. Jake raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "New, like?" He prodded gently, a hint of excitement mingling with uncertainty. So, I took the plunge, sharing snippets of what I had read, my cheeks flushing as I laid bare my thoughts on desires I had tucked away, painting a picture of openness and exploration. To my relief, he listened, absorbed in what I said, his expression morphing from confusion to intrigue. What started as an awkward conversation soon flowed into a deeper discussion filled with laughter, vulnerability, and the sweet release of unburdening myself of my hidden wishes. As the night unfolded, we delved into our fantasies, each confession easing the tension between us as we discovered overlapping interests. One of us would share a thought, a dream of escapades just outside the realm of our everyday life, and the other would respond with enthusiasm, eager to explore these new waters together. Through this sharing, I noticed a shift, not just in our dialogue but in how I felt about our relationship. The electricity in the air seemed tangible, the space between us charged with possibility. But I did feel a shadow lurking in the recesses of my mind, the weight of societal expectations whispering doubts that perhaps we were overstepping, or worse, were we risking our comfortable bond for something ultimately unattainable? It was all a little frightening, yet exhilarating at the same time, a tango of emotions I hadn't anticipated. We eventually decided to act on one of my more adventurous suggestions, planning our first outing into an upscale adult store known for its open-minded staff and welcoming atmosphere. I was a bundle of nerves, unsure if we were stepping too far outside our usual groove. That Sunday afternoon, we entered the store hand in hand, a small thrill coursing through me as I noticed fellow couples exploring aisles, laughing over novelty items, and exchanging knowing glances, their comfort sparking a fire of liberation within me. Jake and I navigated the store, exploring various sections from sensual lotions to intriguing toys. To my surprise, our playful banter began to flourish between the seemingly mundane decisions of what to try or what to leave behind. As we picked up a few items that piqued our interest, there was an unspoken understanding that we were embarking on a journey together, not just exploring products but unearthing uncharted territories of our relationship, each item a step into deeper intimacy. As we left the store, our hands intertwined and our hearts aligned, I felt a warmth radiating from within, an affirmation that not only had we taken a literal step toward expanding our physical connection, but we had also broadened the emotional landscape of our partnership. The tips I had discovered were more than just recommendations, they had opened a portal to authenticity, revealing a freedom that was ours for the taking. From that day forward, we made it a habit to communicate openly about our desires, exploring new facets of intimacy without the fear of judgment. Our relationship deepened in ways we hadn't imagined, bonded by the courage to share even our most vulnerable thoughts. In reflection, I think what began as a simple Reddit thread expanded into something profound, our desire to connect, challenge boundaries, and grow together. Sometimes I look back on that night and realize how significant it was to confront insecurities and be brave enough to ask, what if? It was a lesson in trust, revealing a world where love thrives on understanding and exploration. A note of caution, though, as exhilarating as it was also essential to ensure that both Jake and I felt comfortable throughout this journey, emphasizing consent and check-ins, learning together at our own pace. I now understand that intimacy is a shared adventure, marked not just by the physical but by the emotional landscape we navigate side by side. And to anyone reading this, I say embrace communication. It could be the best NSFW tip you might ever receive. If you're interested, here's a little update. A few months have passed since that pivotal day, and we now schedule regular sessions to discuss what we want to explore, both inside and outside the bedroom. It's like an open book, each chapter revealing something new about ourselves we didn't know existed. There's a certain peace in knowing that we are on this journey together, continuously writing our story, one daring adventure at a time. Every day, I am reminded that intimacy is not just about the act, but rather the connection and openness that fuels it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Sitting here in the dim light of the living room, I can hear the faint hum of the refrigerator mingling with the sounds of the outside world, distant laughter from neighbors, the soft rustle of leaves in the night breeze. It's peaceful, as if the universe is giving us a moment to breathe and reflect on all the changes that have unfurled since our profound revelation. What started as an awkward admission of desires has blossomed into this beautiful exploration of intimacy. My partner and I have discovered that the more we share our thoughts, fears, and fantasies, the closer we become. I used to think intimacy was a binary concept, a straightforward equation of bodies meeting, but as we've peeled back layers of ourselves, I now see it as an endless spectrum filled with nuances and textures. It's almost amusing to think about how naive I once was, operating under the belief that communication was secondary to the act itself, and yet, here I am, realizing that it's the very foundation of everything we've built together. We've established a weekly ritual of sorts, where we sit across from each other, sipping tea while delving into what sparks joy, curiosity, and even fear in our relationship. It's in those quiet conversations where I feel the weight of my heart begin to lift, as we dare to voice not only what we want but what we might want to explore. One evening sticks out in particular, a night marked by vulnerability. We had just come home after seeing an eclectic art exhibit that showcased intimate imagery and personal stories. The mere act of sharing the experience had ignited a discussion about our own narratives, and as I glanced at my partner, their eyes glimmering with shared excitement, I felt a surge of courage. What if we tried role-playing? I blurted out, a grin breaking across my face despite the flutter of nerves in my stomach. To my surprise, My proposal was met with a warm, welcoming smile, and in that moment, I knew we were embarking on yet another chapter. We spent the next week planning out characters and scenarios, giggling at the absurdity of it all while secretly indulging in the thrill of what lay ahead. And so, the night arrived. We had transformed our living room into a makeshift stage, complete with dim lighting, soft music, and props derived from random corners of our home. As we stepped into our roles, I found laughter blending seamlessly with anticipation, blurring the lines between performance and genuine connection. The boundaries we had once thought of as rigid began to dissolve, giving way to creativity and discovery. I felt liberated, comfortable donning a role that allowed me to explore facets of my personality I'd tucked away. What began as playful banter morphed into something far more powerful, a shared experience that unfurled layers of affection I didn't know existed. We explored fantasies that had previously felt too vulnerable to share, opening the door to discussions about attraction and desire in ways that deepened our bond. When everything was said and done, we collapsed into each other's arms, breathless and flushed, a laughter that echoed off the walls blending seamlessly with the warmth we shared. Looking back, it's incredible how that single suggestion blossomed into a vibrant exploration of ourselves. Together, we learned that intimacy, in its most profound form, is less about the individual acts and more about the trust and connection that fuels them. As I lean back against my partner now, their fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm, I can't help but feel a wave of gratitude wash over me. The months past have shown us that adventure lies not only in grand experiences but also in the simple act of being with each other and opening up our hearts. Life, like our relationship, is a continuous journey filled with unexpected turns and revelations, and I find myself continually excited about what comes next. So here's to the chapters yet unwritten, the whispers shared in the dark, and the ever-evolving narrative of us. As I close my eyes, I wish I could bottle up this feeling, this notion that love and intimacy are but canvases awaiting our brushes, ready to be filled with the colors of our experiences and desires. Little did I know that this journey of discovery would be just the beginning, a prelude to further adventures we had yet to imagine, together embracing life with open hearts, guided by a delicate dance of trust, laughter, and love. In the weeks following that transformative conversation, my relationship with Alex took on a rhythm, like a well-rehearsed melody where each note felt harmoniously aligned, effortlessly flowing into the next. We found ourselves spending evenings sprawled across the couch, sharing secrets under the soft glow of fairy lights, peeling back layers of our emotions as if they were the wrapping on a much-anticipated gift. I remember one particular night vividly, when the air outside had just begun to cool, a sharp contrast to the warmth we created in our little bubble. We gorged on popcorn while watching silly movies, laughter spilling from us like wine from a too-full glass. Yet, as the credits rolled, a comfortable silence enveloped us, and I felt the itch for something deeper, an unspoken question floating softly between us. What if we took our exploration a step further? I whispered, my heart racing as I opened the door to vulnerability once again. Alex turned towards me, a teasing grin emerging on his face. Do you have something specific in mind? I felt heat rush to my cheeks, and with it, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. We had traded ideas before, a sensual weekend getaway, that tantalizing game of truth or dare, but the notion that I was about to confess something more profound left me momentarily speechless. I don't know. Maybe. A group setting? I managed, contrary to the fear edging its way into my mind. The thought of inviting others into our intimate dynamic felt raw and refreshingly dangerous, like standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to take a leap into the unknown. I held my breath, unsure of Alex's reaction, but to my relief, his eyes lit up with intrigue rather than skepticism. An open exploration, he mused, leaning closer, his expression a careful blend of excitement and caution. We delved into the idea over the following days, navigating our own boundaries and preferences, always careful to keep communication flowing freely between us. Our candid discussions brought us closer, igniting new flames within our connection, and soon enough, we found ourselves at a local gathering, an unofficial meet and greet for adventurous spirits seeking the same connection. As I walked into the room, Alex's hand in mine felt like both a reassurance and an anchor. I could feel the fluttering of uncertainty in my stomach, weaving itself around the warmth of excitement. The atmosphere was comfortably intimate, dimly lit with shadows dancing across the walls as laughter and soft music swirled around us. Just as we had both anticipated, we encountered people from all walks of life, the nervous newcomers like us and the seasoned adventurers who exuded confidence. We listened to stories shared in hushed tones, hiring glimpses of life lived boldly, each narrative leaving an imprint on our thoughts. It felt both surreal and electric, like walking through an art gallery at midnight, captivated yet hesitant to touch anything. The night wore on, a delicate balance struck between curiosity and intimacy, until eventually, I turned to Alex, both our eyes bright with wonder. "How do we feel about this?" I asked quietly, gauging the pulse of our experience. His reply was a soft smile that danced in the flickering light of the room, a silent acknowledgement that we were sailing together into uncharted waters. We ended the evening with new friends, a couple whose chemistry ignited something unexpected within me. As we shared stories and laughter over drinks, the thrill of that connection wrapped around my chest like a warm blanket, reminding me that intimacy isn't constrained to just one person, rather, it can expand outwards, enveloping others in its embrace while still honoring the bond we had cultivated. The weeks that followed felt like a vibrant tapestry being woven together, threads of shared experiences intertwining with the foundation we'd built. We embraced not only our own touch but explored how that touch could ripple out through connections we had initiated at that event. We learned the art of inclusive intimacy, sharing moments that felt electric without ever diluting the love we held for each other. On the nights when we found ourselves in tangled sheets after returning home, we would share whispered secrets about our encounters, each word serving to stitch us closer together, binding us tighter with trust and understanding. The thrill of our home becoming a sanctuary where we explored our fantasies seemed almost surreal, and I drank it in like a fine wine. One particularly daring evening, we decided to host our own gathering, inviting the friends we'd met and easing ourselves deeper into this new chapter of exploration. It felt incredibly exhilarating to open our doors and let others experience a piece of our world. Soft music thrummed invitingly in the background as laughter echoed off the walls, filling the space with a camaraderie I never anticipated. I watched as Alex moved through the room, effortlessly engaging with the others, bringing his genuine warmth and charm to the forefront. My heart swelled with love and pride. Yet, amidst the laughter and connection, an unexpected moment arose. I found myself sharing a playful conversation with one of the guests, an intriguing individual who came alive in the night's energy. Our dialogue flowed easily, like a river carving through rock, each laugh becoming a bridge connecting our two worlds. Before I knew it, I felt a pang of vulnerability swell unexpectedly within me as I realized, in the warm hum of the gathering, that I was also flirting, experimenting with my own boundaries of intimacy and attraction. Would I share a kiss, a touch, or was this stepping too far? A flurry of emotions cascaded through me, an engaging blend of excitement and uncertainty as I pulled back, resting my gaze upon Alex who was mingling just a few feet away. Would this be something we might explore, or would it breach our carefully laid boundaries? Catching my breath, I found solace in his reassuring smile as he met my eyes, a silent dialogue passing between us that spoke of trust and love. The thought of sharing this journey felt both liberating and terrifying, yet I could sense a profound sense of connection, an understanding that no experience would diminish the bond we had. After resolving the shifty feelings that danced around in my belly, I decided on openness. "Would you be okay if I kissed them?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, feeling as though we were dancing along the fringes of a truth that was utterly beautiful in its complexity. Alex's grin deepened, and he nodded slowly, the warmth in his eyes beckoning me to dive further into this adventure we shared. With his approval echoing in my mind like a sweet melody, I took a bold step closer to the other person, allowing the swirling sensations of excitement and bonding to weave their magic around us. As I leaned in, the world around us faded. There was nothing but the shared laughter and the obliterating warmth of connection. In that moment, I simply felt alive, vulnerable, and unapologetically free. When the evening finally drew to a close, we slipped away from the vibrant energy, heads spinning with the thrill of what had transpired. Each moment echoed in my mind, carving pathways of feelings I had previously thought unattainable. As we laid together under the soft blankets of our bed, I turned to Alex, whispering my reflections on the experience we had shared. "It felt right, didn't it?" I said, my heart fluttering with joy at the thought of how we'd beautifully navigated this new territory together. "It truly did," he replied, his eyes shimmering with understanding, "because we faced it all, side by side." We fell into a comfortable silence, the night wrapping around us like a soft cocoon, knowing then that our journey was only just beginning. The chapter we had penned had opened us up to the infinite possibilities lying ahead. As I let sleep wrap its gentle embrace around me, I looked forward to every unwritten page. There would be more laughter, exploration, and discovery waiting for us, painting our lives in colors we hadn't yet imagined, reminding us that love and intimacy come in endless forms, secretly inviting us to embrace the beauty in each journey we share.